Hello, in this video I'm going to teach you how to integrate your Yamaha MONTAGE or MODX with Apple's Logic Pro 10. It's not a particularly straightforward setup, especially if you're a novice to these things, but I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible because the MONTAGE and the MODX are very deep and complex instruments, so the setup is not necessarily particularly straightforward, but it's all worth it in the end. Now I'm going to make a few assumptions before we start. The first being that you have already connected your keyboard to your Macintosh using a USB cable. It needs to be a standard USB cable from the Mac through to the USB to host port on the back of your keyboard. Once you've got that connected, you need to head over to Yamaha's site and download the Yamaha Steinberg USB driver. You'll find that under the downloads for the MONTAGE and the MODX. They both use the same driver. It's the standard Steinberg USB driver. After that's installed, I want you to head over to Audio MIDI Setup, which is an application that is in the Utilities folder of your Applications directory, and check that you have a new device called MONTAGE or MODX, which is the USB audio system coming out of the back of your synth. In the case of the MONTAGE, we have 32 input channels and 6 output channels, making 16 stereo in and 3 stereo out. The other part of Audio MIDI setup is the MIDI Studio, and you will find that in your MIDI Studio is a MONTAGE or a MODX icon. You'll notice that I have renamed mine to MONTAGE 7WH just so that I can distinguish it from anything else. To rename it, just go ahead and type something in there. Before we can get started with Logic, we need to make sure that the synthesizer is set up properly. And we also need to understand a few things about the way that the MONTAGE and the MODX work in order to get the most out of it. The first thing I need to explain is that we have 8 parts listed here on the MODX and MONTAGE screen. This CFX concept performance is actually made up of 4 parts. Those 4 parts or each do different jobs. I think that part 4 is a key off sound. You can see that that's activating when I release. Part 3 is for the very high registers, and part 1 is for normal velocity, and part 2 is for hard velocity. You saw them all activating there. Those all send data on separate channels. Part 1 on channel 1, part 2 on channel 2. This is different from normal synthesizers. Most synthesizers allocate a single channel that they're going to transmit on, and that's all they do. You can pick up the entire transmission of the synthesizer from a single MIDI channel. That is not the case with the MONTAGE and the MODX. It sounds overly complicated, but you'll find out that actually it's brilliant. So, now that we know how that works, let's make sure that we are actually set up in that mode. Press Utility and go to Advanced Settings and make sure that your MIDI I/O mode is set to multi. When it's set to multi, it will transmit each part on a separate channel. That might sound overly complicated, but when you're working with a DAW, it is absolutely necessary. Single and hybrid mode have their own specific functions which are not useful for working with a DAW. Leave them alone for now. Multi-mode is what you want. The next thing we want is to make sure that we have disconnected local control. Local control is a system whereby the keyboard and the faders and the encoders are all directly connected to the tone generator, the thing that actually makes a noise inside the synthesizer. We don't want that. What we want to do is we want to be able to intercept the control signals that come from here in our DAW, process them, and then send them back to the MONTAGE or the MODX. In order to do that, we have to sever the connection between the tone generator and the controls. And we can see the status of the connection by virtue of this little icon here, this little keyboard. If I click on that, it'll take me to the quick setup screen, and I can see that I'm currently in standalone mode. But I want to sever the connection between the controls and the tone generator, and I'm going to do that by using quick setup number 1, MIDI rec, MIDI record on DAW. Now that I've done that, I don't have the DAW running at the moment. If I try to use the keys, nothing happens because the keyboard is disconnected. Now we're ready. Now I've just reconnected local control for a moment because I was going to show you on this MIDI monitor the fact that those individual parts do in fact transmit on different channels. The easiest way to do that is to just play the audition for this particular part. So here we go. And you can see, let's stop that now, that we have channel 3, 4, 1, 2. Yet it was just playing one performance. So that's just a useful demo of the fact that it is using all of those different parts. So now we're ready to get into Logic. The first thing we need to do is to tell Logic that we're going to be working with not a software instrument, but an external MIDI instrument. We can't use the external instrument plugin as much as I'd love to because it's very convenient, but there is a very simple reason why we can't use it that I'll explain later. But for now, select external MIDI, choose a MIDI destination of whatever your montage is called on port 1, and then not channel 1, but all channels. Create that. And here we go, there's a montage port 1. Let's clear the MIDI monitor and check what happens if we have that record enabled and we play some notes. Now, if you've got your montage set up to be output into the speakers directly, you will have heard that. But if you are monitoring the Logic output directly as I am through a separate audio interface, that will have been completely silent. Why is that? Well, because we're only recording MIDI at the moment. We also need to have an audio channel. So let's create an audio channel and have it coming from input 1 and 2 of the montage. I've renamed my inputs. I'll show you how to do that in a moment, but it is input 1 and 2, the first stereo pair of the montage USB, and I'm going to send it to my stereo output, and let's hit go. Now, this is a common error. If I were to now start playing right away, I can see that there's MIDI data going on over here, but there's nothing coming out of Logic. There's no audio being registered. Why not? Because we're not telling the montage to do anything. I should just note that I'm using the terms montage and MODX interchangeably because they're so similar. In the rare instance where the MODX and the montage do something differently, I'll note that. And the main difference for our purposes here is the number of audio channels that they have to deal with. But at the moment, for all intents and purposes, they are identical. Back on topic, while the audio 1 channel strip is record enabled and selected, then any input I have on the keyboard will do nothing. It's not being reflected back to the montage. In order to have it reflected back to the montage, I need to check the MIDI channel, the MIDI track. Now when I do the same, there it is, and you can hear it. Fantastic. Now, remember that this track is recording, it's monitoring and recording every single channel. So let's blow that up and let's tell it to record, I don't know, let's do the audition for the performance that we've currently got selected. So I'll hit record on that. Oh, let's send it back to the beginning. Let's hit record, wait for it to count in, and hit the audition button. Now you can see that there's lots of data being recorded and audio being recorded as well because we have record enable on both of these tracks. Let's let it play out for a minute. That'll do. Now, what we have here is we have the recorded audio. Now this is just a stereo output of everything that the montage was producing. That's great, that's very useful, but if you're wondering how to get your individual parts to record on separate channels, keep watching, we're getting to that. Stand by. But what we're interested in at the moment is the MIDI. So let's take a look at the MIDI data, and you can see there is bucket loads of it. That performance was very rich, and let's take a look at the events list that brought up. You can see that we've got channels 1 to 4 registering events, we've got notes, we've got controls, and if I scroll around a bit, here we go. Here is channel 95 being used. Channel 95 is normally reserved for phaser depth, but by default on the Montage it is used for the super knob. So this is the super knob being turned in that audition performance. This is great, but at this point I need to show you a slight problem. Now, the super knob was doing its job there, and a lovely job it did too. And if I go onto the Montage myself and turn the super knob, you can see that all of those encoder registers on the Montage screen are changing. That is because the super knob is sending CC95. It is a standard MIDI channel message. How about these encoders then? How about if I turn this one? Oh, you can see that I'm turning it, but it's doing absolutely nothing. Why is that? And the same is true for all of those, by the way. None of those are having any effect. The reason for that is that I am currently in performance edit mode, not part edit mode. I don't have a particular part selected. I am in performance mode. And in performance mode, these encoders send SysX, or system exclusive messages. They are special messages that only the Montage and the MODX understand. By default, Logic will not transmit those back to the synthesizer. So as a result, because these have been disconnected from the tone engine, any amount of wiggling those is going to make absolutely no difference. But we can fix that. And to do that, we have to fix something at a per project level. This has to be done every time you create a new project. Go to File, Project Settings, and MIDI, and you will find a MIDI through section. I want to turn on SysX with MIDI through and transmit it to the Montage. You can see that I've got the individual channels 1 to 16 listed there, but I don't want those. I want all channels, which is this one that has no channel label. As soon as I set that and try twiddling some encoders, you can see that it works. This is brilliant. Now I've got everything set up the way I want it. Now the CFX Composite performance that we've been using so far represents a single complicated instrument using 4 parts. And so that would be okay to record as a single stereo channel. But what about if you have genuinely separate parts? Well, let's go and take a look at another performance. That one will do nicely. This is an old Motif XF performance. It has a single part piano, a lead sound, some strings, and some sort of ambient thing. Now, remember, it's going to transmit these on channels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to record all 4 of those into this single MIDI channel here. And I'm also going to record the stereo output of this performance as well. Let's record it, and we'll use the audition again. That'll do. So we've got a nice audio recording of the entire performance, and we've got the MIDI of all 4 parts in one go. Now, this is where things become different between the Montage and the MODX. The MODX has a limited number of stereo output channels. You cannot output 16 separate stereo channels at the same time from the MODX, whereas the Montage can do that. So rather than using 16 parts, we're just going to use these 4, and I'm going to show you how to do it the MODX way and the Montage way. Let's start with the MODX way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this track because I'm going to use it later. So I am just going to duplicate that track. Oh, actually, I don't think I can do that. Let's copy that and make a track with duplicate settings and paste it in. And I'm just going to get rid of that and mute it. We're just going to use that for later. Right, now with this one, I am going to prepare it to record each individual part separately. And to do that, I need to separate it out into individual tracks. So let's right click and hit separate by MIDI channel. And now what we get, I'll just move these out of the way for later. I've now got 4 tracks, each of which has the channel data for a single part. It looks the same, but that's fundamentally because I was pressing the same keys for each part. That could be different if you were recording in a different way, but for now this will work. Now I need to record the audio for each one of those tracks individually. So create a new audio track, recording, montage, main, left and right, 1 and 2. In it goes. Now I'm going to solo this track and record that track. Rewind here, I'm going to turn on loop so we only get that. No, I'm not, because I don't want to record over again. So let's just play that back with this on record, and we should get just part 1 recorded into audio. Here we go. Although clearly not. So why? That's why. Let's try that again, shall we? Here comes the recording. There we go. That is just the piano part recorded as a single stereo track. Now, come into here and we'll add another audio part in exactly the same way, and this time this is going to be recording this second one. Let's rename these, shall we? So we'll call this piano, and this one is, what was it? We've got that, and let's call that excuse my terrible typing. Right, let's go ahead and solo the synth lead and record the audio for that. Rewind to the beginning and go. Got it. Now you get the idea here. We are now going to add another audio track. That this time is going to be recording the strings. Let's call this strings audio, and we'll solo just that. You can make sure that that's the only one that's active, and let's go ahead and record this guy. All good, and the final track will be this one. We'll have a new audio track, same settings again. Solo that one, line up the recorder, and off we go. Okay, there we go. At this point, we could actually turn off all of the MODX bits and pieces. We can dump those down there and essentially forget about them. We don't need them anymore because we've got the recorded audio. So that is how we work with the MODX. Now, we don't have a MODX here, we have a montage. So let's do it the montage way. The first thing I'm going to do is dump all of this MODX type stuff down here. Come on, down you go. And remember that I've still got my montage mixed channel data up here and the original stereo recording here. So all I'm going to do is just plop all of those into a track stack, and I'm going to mute the whole lot of that because I don't need it right now. And let's get rid of all this solo rubbish. Okay, here is my 4-channel audio. Now what I can do here is I can say that I want a new audio track. This is audio 1 and 2, and it's outputting to 1 and 2, but actually I want 4 tracks and I want them ascending, and hopefully that will just work this out. So here we go. Let's put them in here. I don't need that audio there. Let's see what we've got. This is audio channel 6, and it is recording montage 1 and 2. This is audio 7. It's recording montage 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. This is all looking good. They're all set up to record, so I should be able to record all of them in one go. However, before I do that, I need to tell the montage that it actually should be outputting the audio as separate channels. So I'm going to go into the utility menu again and set quick setup for audio record on DAW. Now that I've done that, it will direct each part to its own USB channel. Let's see if it works. So the next thing I want to talk about is Montage or MODX Connect, which is a utility from Yamaha that allows you to essentially save the settings for your synthesizer into your Logic project. It works with various other DAWs as well, but seeing if we're using Logic, that's the one we're going to use. So I'm going to show you how to use that. Let's create a new software instrument this time. And this time I need to head down to AU Instruments, and you can see that under Yamaha I've got Montage Connect. I'm going to tell it that it's stereo even though it has no idea what it is. It doesn't need any output, and let's create that. Now I have this instrument channel. I'm going to call that Montage Connect, and I'm going to drag it down to the bottom of my track stack for reasons that I will explain later. And if I click on there, you'll see that we have this set of controls that allows us to transmit data to and from the montage. Now, why is that useful? Well, because when you've set up a project, you probably have a particular performance in mind to go with that project, and it would be really useful if you didn't have to tell the montage separately to load that stuff at the point that you are going to use it. Now, I don't know if you just saw that the montage just transmitted its MIDI data into Montage Connect, but you can see that the performance that was registered on the montage is now registered in Montage Connect. So all I have to do now is close that down, and anytime that I save this project now, it will save the montage settings. So let me show you how that works. I am going to get rid of all of this stuff actually. Yeah, goodbye for all. Goodbye, and goodbye to those tracks as well. Now I've only got my MIDI data and Montage Connect. So remembering that we have the American Beauty performance loaded, and that corresponds to this MIDI. I'm going to save my project at this point, and then I'm going to go and mess up the performance. So I'm going to come into here and I'm going to category search it, and I'm going to give it that, and then I'm going to give this is going to become that thing, and then that is going to become this, and I don't know if any of that works actually, but essentially I have messed up the performance. In fact, I'm going to really mess it up by just giving it a whole different performance. Let's give it the Bristol performance instead. Now that clearly will not work with this. This is expecting a particular set of of performance parts, and in fact, if I were to very quickly add in an audio track so we could monitor what is going to be coming from this. Let's have a listen to this, because I'm sure it's going to be fairly horrific. I'm going to need to switch my montage back into MIDI record on DAW mode now, so that it doesn't record on lots of different channels. But if I were to play this back, I'm sure that we would get something very strange. Yes, clearly not good at all. But because I saved the scene just now with Montage Connect attached, I can just go to Revert, and there's my saved project. We're going to skip all of that lot, and Montage Connect was brought in. It is now receiving MIDI data. Did you see that? And it's brought back the exact settings that the montage had at the point that I saved the project, because Montage Connect has stored those settings and will transmit them back on demand. So now that we've got all that set up, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to use the keyboard or the mouse to control Logic's transport? Well, we don't have to. In fact, we can go much further than that, because the Montage and the MODX, since the most recent version of their operating system update, both have a DAW remote facility built in. How do we use it? Well, first of all, we've got to tell Logic to expect it. So let's come into File, no, Preferences, no, Control Surface, there we are, and Setup. And from here, you want a new device. Hit Install, scroll down the list to Mackie Control. Mackie Designs, Mackie Control, Logic Control. Add that. Close this down, and now you need to set the output port to Montage port 2, and that to Montage port 2. That should be it. You can rename that if you want to. Let's close that down, and with a little luck we should get some results. Let's check it. Coming over to the montage, I'm going to click this remote button in the bottom left. If you haven't done this before, you need to go to Settings and make sure that your DAW is set to Logic Pro. Each DAW has its own specific settings. We need to make sure we're using Logic Pro, otherwise it will have no idea what you're talking about. Let's come back to Control, and the first thing to test would be, does it actually play back? It does. And as you can see, my transport controls work fine, my play control works fine, my stop control, and my play and record. This is great. You also have a whole collection of controls that you can set up to allow different buttons, such as your scene buttons, to perform different functions within Logic. There's all manner of stuff that you can set up as shortcuts here. That's kind of beyond the scope of this video, but I'm sure that you'll be able to play with that and figure out where you're going. What we also have is the ability to select tracks. And if we have a look in here, we should find that we have got tracks 1, 2 and 3 selectable using these buttons here. I'm afraid on a MODX you're out of luck on that. And you can also set mute on tracks. Tracks 1 to 8 can be muted here, and I believe this is used for soloing perhaps. Or is that? Ah, that's record enable. Record enable, mute, and part select. All great. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how to record the output of arpeggios into Logic. What we've been doing so far is we've been only recording the actual key presses, which you could consider to be like the control notes. They are the notes that initiate the arpeggios, but they are not the arpeggios themselves. So let's go for a different performance that will demonstrate this better. Let's use DJ Montage, because DJ Montage has 8 parts with loads of arpeggio stuff going on. And before we switch back to Logic, we need to go back into the utility menu and set up, quick setup to Arp Rec on DAW. arpeggio record on DAW. What this will do is it will disconnect the arpeggiator from the montage in the same way that local control disconnected the keyboard, and it will send the actual notes that are generated by the arpeggio out to the DAW. So let's head over to Logic, get rid of this previous recording and set up for a new one. Let's get ready to record. I'm going to use the Audition again, and let's see how we go. So you can see there is loads and loads of data being written down there, and you can also see that there's automation data coming through the montage, and lots of tracks are active and doing stuff. So I'll just let this run through and then we'll take it apart and see what we can do with it. That will probably do. I think we messed up a bit of recording at the beginning there, but that doesn't really matter. All that matters is that we do have the recording now. So let's go and see what we've got. The next thing I want to do is go into the montage and set audio record on DAW, because I want to now monitor the audio output of each one of those tracks. And then I just want to check in here that local control is off, and I don't want ARP MIDI to be on either. Let's come out of there and we should be good. So here we are back in Logic. I've got this would be the stereo track, but I don't want that anymore. So let's get rid of that and add 8 audio tracks. We're going to go audio starting with input 1 and 2, which is the montage main. And I want to monitor that input, and I'm going to have 8 of them ascending, and hopefully that will just give me exactly what I want. And when I play this back, I should be able to see each one of those tracks doing its thing. I'm going to drag the montage connect and the MIDI data down to the bottom of the screen for reasons I'll show you in a minute. Let's just take a quick look. I'm going to switch over to the mixer view, and let's see what we get. Now, as this plays through, you'll notice that the mix is probably slightly different from what we heard during the audition, and that is because the volume of each one of these parts is now being controlled by Logic, rather than the original volume that was set by the montage performance. But we can edit that in real time using the DAW remote function. So let's switch over to the montage again and turn on the remote. And now each one of these faders now corresponds to one of those tracks. So this is the reason why I moved the MIDI and the control track down to the bottom of the list, because now my 8 faders here correspond to my 8 audio tracks. And as I move this up and down, you can see all of this stuff moving in real time. So now that we've got a very clumsy mix there, I could actually go and send all of those off to some other controls. So let's take track 1, for example. I could now add audio effects to that and have Logic do stuff to it before it outputs. That's a Logic thing, not really a montage thing, so I'm going to leave that for now. But now that we do have these 8 individual audio tracks being read from this separate MIDI track, then you can do pretty much anything you want to it. So that concludes this look at montage with Logic Pro X. I hope you found it informative. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will do my best to get back to you. In the meantime, enjoy your montage or your MODX, and I wish you all the best with Logic.